What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this Monday in February. And today I'm super excited to be joined by my friend Tara Swan from, where are you right now? Outside of Jamestown?
Yes, yes, just outside of Jamestown
Where?
in
What's it? What?
Falconer. It's called
Falconer.
Falconer. Yeah, it's the next town right over from Jamestown.
So we are, which is in upstate New York, and we are recording this thing at 6 a.m., which is, crazy time for me. So why are we recording it this time? What do you do? Where you, I know you got to get to work. So where do you do?
Yeah, I am a high school guidance counselor in Falconer, and yes, I appreciate you getting up so early to record this. You talk a lot about building relationships, and as I had told you when I was texting you frantically about coming up with a time, I hate to leave my kids fend for themselves. So it's just important for me to be there.
Well,
And
I
especially
appreciate
because
that.
the other guidance counselor is out, so I'm all by myself and I don't like to leave them alone.
Perfect. So we'll get you there on time. So Tara and I
Thank
first
you.
met. I think it was now. It's got to be about 8 years ago when we first met because my son is 8 and you were pregnant at the time and my
Yeah.
wife was pregnant and I actually was hired to consult in a school that you were working in. I don't remember the name of the school. Do you remember the name of the school?
Yes, I do.
What
So
was it?
I had started my career out at the Gustavus Adolphus Learning Center, which is actually an alternative education program for court adjudicated youth. And yes, it was in 2011 that we had met because I remember I was pregnant at the same time that your wife was. And the age of our children, yes, would be the same.
How long did you work there?
I had started there in 2009 and ended up, I guess, officially leaving in 2015.
Gotcha.
So for about 6 years, I had worked there.
So when you say it was adjudicated court, what is that? What did it actually mean? Like what kind of population were you working with there?
As opposed to these children going to jail, they were sent to our facility. And it ranged in age as far as the residential piece of our program. It only allowed students 12 to 18. However, we had a day program as well, and affiliations, relationships with other local school districts, and we had students as young as first grade within our program.
Wow. So
Now, they weren't technically appointed there through the court system, but they had caused enough of a disruption in their home school that they sent them out to us.
So what do you is there any what do you remember from working there? Any situations or any kids that jump out or any, home life stories that you recall?
Yes, I think, with each kid they had their own story, and oftentimes it was just heartbreaking hearing the things that these kids had gone through. One of the stories that sticks out to me the most was a student who was from the Buffalo area. And at that time, we had students, it would range anywhere from Buffalo to New York City to Rochester. So we were getting kids sent to us from all over the state. And one of the kids in particular, he had been placed with us residentially. And over time, these students will earn back their privileges where the court decides that they need to be reintroduced to their home life, and they will start out by home visits on the weekends and then over holidays and whatnot, and this being a way to integrate them back into that environment. Well, one of the kids had gone home on the weekend to the Buffalo area, had returned that Sunday, came to school, and it was later in the week we had detectives from the Buffalo Police Department show up at our facility. And unsure of what had happened, it ended up coming out that this in particular student was affiliated with a gang and had actually gone home on his home visit that weekend and had shot someone. And we had the police come down to investigate this. And not only was it um, scary, to think about what this kid had gone and done. But now, because of his affiliation with the gang, it was also concerning, and we had to be protective of the other students because at any time, we could have had people showing up at our school to take care of matters.
Wow, of course. So did the kids live there? They lived on campus there?
It was about half and half. The students, like I had mentioned before, if they ranged in age, we had first graders all the way to 12th graders. And if a student, they had to be a minimum age of 12. And it was, like I said, 50-50. We had 50% of the kids living there residentially, and then 50% of the kids were sent to us from the local school districts.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow. So what made you interested in doing this line of work? Like what when you grew up, what did you want to be a counselor or a social worker or a teacher or anything like that? No, you're
No,
laughing.
no. I think part of the reason why I became interested in being a guidance counselor, and I always share this with my students because I work, as I mentioned, with high school students, so college bound students, workforce ready students. And I always share with them because I think probably even for yourself, you had mentioned that you wanted to be a radio host.
Yeah.
And we all go through these phases in our life where at the time I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to help people. And when I went to college, turns out I really wasn't very good at chemistry nor the math piece when I was, repeating pre-calc for the second time because I had failed it the first time. I was like, I don't really think this is up my alley. And so then I switched to law because if you're not going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, right?
Right.
Like
Of
that's just
course.
what you do. And so when I was sleeping during my political science class, I was like, I don't think this is it either. And so finally I was like, but I really enjoyed the sociology classes. I enjoy psychology. And it just so happened that my classes, like the stars aligned, my classes aligned, and I was able to graduate on time. And then I'm like, I need to help guide people, youth, like on what they want to do, and at the same time, tell them that it's okay. You don't have to figure it out. It's
Right.
not something that you're probably going to change your mind. As they say, the average person changes their mind up to 4 times when they're in college on their major. And I tell my kids now, I'm not even sure this is what I'll do the rest of my life, but I wanted to be that driving force in school to hopefully help guide them. Or even the biggest thing for me is I love getting the difficult students whose parents, although maybe college was something they wanted to do, never followed through with it for whatever reason. Um, but making these kids realize that they have the potential
Mhm.
and that even though parents didn't go to college, they're going to be the first people in their family to go down that road. Like it's okay, and you're going to be great at it. You're going to be successful, and you just got to stick with it.
Do you have any that jump out at you? Any success stories that do jump out at you? Any kids that you've worked with in your career that you look at right now and you're like, I'm so proud of what they're doing based on where they came from?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's quite a few that come to mind. Um, as a school counselor, feel I'm very fortunate. I have the best of both worlds because I don't have to punish kids. I'm not in that role to discipline. I'm not here to tell you, you need to stop what you're doing. And likewise, I don't have any sort of curriculum that I have to cram down their throats. So I can build relationships with these kids and to see where they are. And I tell them, I go, listen, when you graduate from high school, you can email me, you can call me, but don't come and hang out with me. Like that's not cool. I am happy with what you're doing and I'm excited for you, but I want you to move on with your life. And I have a lot of students in particular um, this school year, and actually the school that I'm at now. So this is my first group of kids. I started with them when they were in ninth grade, and they're actually graduating now.
Mm,
So I've been with them through their entire high school career, and I've built a lot of relationships. And I have a lot of students who have dealt with loss, tremendous loss throughout their life. And I am so proud of them that they've been able to overcome. Like, I have one girl that comes to mind whose mother had died of cancer back in 2015. So it would have been the same time that I had started. And we went from a point where she wasn't coming to school, her grades were questionable. And in working with her and in spending time with her, building a relationship with her. She's in school every single day.
mm,
She's always in my office saying good morning, saying goodbye, and even on the weekends, have a great weekend. I thank you for all that you do. And I
mm.
just tell her repeatedly, the fact that she has come so far and despite what she's been through, I know she's going to go on and do great things. And she is looking at college right now. She has her heart set on Niagara University. And it's funny because her being the youngest of the children in her family, I think her dad is a little hesitant on letting her go.
Mm.
But I'm like, you need to do this for you. Obviously, it's a family choice, but you need to go on to the next step of your life. And you're going to be awesome at it.
When you say building relationships, I think it's a broad phrase, and I obviously
Mhm.
preach that and I believe in that. But what do you mean specifically? So what exactly do you do with a kid that kind of comes in your office and really is maybe annoyed or angry or frustrated or doesn't want to be there? What are the specifics that you do to connect with that kid? Or give me like a couple things.
Well, it varies.
Yeah.
Ironically, I had just had a conversation with a parent in the district who is a friend of mine, and she had made the comment that as a school counselor, we spend too much time with drama as opposed to, and I just looked at her, as opposed to what? Like, what else am I supposed to do? And I had in this conversation with her said to her that, I do have kids that come in my office crying about their boyfriend breaking up with them or this girl saying something about them. And I view that as an opportunity to build a relationship with them. Despite what they're going through, we all have our stories. But despite what they're going through at that time, it really sucks for them. And I have
Mm,
no problem looking them in the eye and saying to them, this sucks. But I'm here for you and I'm here to walk you through it. And I sit there with them and yeah, do we want to listen to all the teenage drama that occurs? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking when I was in high school, it was the same story, the same song and dance, but I listen to it intently because it's what they're going through right now. And then likewise, beyond that, I'm very fortunate in the small school district that I work in. So I know all the kids. I know their faces. I know their names. And I might have a kid who comes in my office completely fired up, just chucked a bottle of Mountain Dew across the classroom, and it went everywhere. And now he is fired up because life sucks for him right now.
mm,
But I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen to him. And then I'm going to say, obviously you regret what you did. It could have been worse. It could have been much worse. But are you okay with us going down and cleaning this mess up? And I'm
mhm,
not going to send him on his own. I'm not going to throw him to the wolves. So I walked down to the classroom with him, and turns out the mess has already been cleaned up. But we're able to have a conversation with the teacher together and kind of go from there. And then from that, I love to see how it goes from there because a lot of the time it's like, oh, I guess she's not that crazy. I guess that she's okay to talk to. And in fact, a part of that conversation with my friend was when we were in high school, we only went to the guidance office to make our schedule for next year and apply to college. That was it. There was no
Mhm.
having conversations with the guidance counselor. And I pride myself in the fact that, kids come down because they want to share with me their their struggles as well as their successes. And I just want them to know that I'm there for it all. It doesn't matter if, life throws you a curveball right now. Like I'm
Mhm.
here and I'm willing to help you through it.
Yeah. I think actually for me, that was my most favorite part of teaching was the drama. I love the drama. I actually enjoyed it. I did like
Mhm.
I liked when the kids would come in and that was what I was looking for. I was looking for their issues. I was looking for who's going out with who broke up with who, why is this one mad over that one? Wait, I thought you were friends with her. Well, I was last week, but now I hate her this week. And like
Oh yeah.
why, like, and trying to help kids navigate through that, for me that was the most fun part of teaching. And I think people who really embrace that, people who like make that their thing and they say this is, I actually enjoy this, I think just do better in general. Do the kids, most of them, know your story? Do they know about Kallie and what happened? And how much of that do you share with them?
There are some kids who know the story. Because of it being a small community. And I've been pretty open through social media, through just putting myself out there and sharing what has occurred in my life. But then there's other ones who come to us. I just had a student at the beginning of the school year move from North Carolina. And we're still working on building a relationship. And his dad is currently in jail. His mom is having difficulties of her own and just absent from his life. He's been willing to share that with me, but I think it's a give and take. I share a little bit of my story to let them know that it's life. We all have our struggles and we all go through some pretty horrendous things. And then I get a little bit from him. And then, so I don't just, I'm not like, oh, wait till you hear what I've gone through.
So
And
how does it sound? So if I'm him, pretend I'm him right now, like what exactly, what do you share? Because my listeners don't know your story. So pretend I'm him. Take me through how you would do it.
well, as I said, he came to me and he's living with his grandparents. So obviously, I want to know why. Why are you living with your grandparents? Is mom and dad around? And not with much enthusiasm, he shares with me that dad is in jail. And that sucks. That really sucks when dad isn't there. And turns out my dad isn't alive either. And so, he'll share a little bit with me about maybe why dad is in jail. And then it's so funny because even to this day, to share my story, sometimes I'm like, that's not even believable. The things that I have faced in my adult life, I'm like, this isn't even real. It's not even believable. This is what you see in the movies. And I think that it gives me some clout when I share some of my story because they're like, wow, you've really been through some stuff too.
Mhm.
And granted, my dad wasn't in jail. My dad was always there for me growing up, but I don't have him now and had lost him tragically. And likewise with my daughter, I'm a mom. I'm a mom. My daughter's not alive. My daughter's not here with me physically, but I know that aspect of being a parent and that unconditional love that you give your children. And so I can share with him like even though your parents aren't involved in your life, I'm sure they love you. And they're they're your parents. You're going to love them back. And in fact, I that's like I think the hardest thing in even when I worked at the Gustavus Adolphus Learning Center was that a lot of these kids came from such horrendous situations and it was the environment that they were in. But despite how abusive the parents were, how non-present the parents were, all they wanted to do was go back to mom and dad. That's all they wanted. That's all they knew. And so I think it's, when I'm sitting down having the conversations with these kids about life, trying to show them that you can turn lemons into lemonade, and that there are things that you can be grateful for despite what life has thrown at you. And so it's more, I hate the setup of my office. I absolutely hate it. I would take out the desk. I would just have chairs,
Mhm.
and if I didn't have book work and computer work that I had to do. But I like to sit face to face with the kids and in a distance where, if I need to reach over and just put my hand on their shoulder and tell them, it's okay and I'm going to help you through this. But it's just kind of that give and take. And I'll tell them that, so I'm a mom. I actually had, as we had talked at the beginning, I was pregnant the same time that you guys were expecting your baby. And I was the type of mom, even going through grad school, like I was going to go to school, finish college, finish my master's degree, get a job, get married, have children. It was going to be all laid out very methodically because that's what we do. We have these expectations for our lives. And when I had my daughter, my mom, she would always be like, Tara, will you relax? Like, but no, mom, I need to make sure that Callie's reaching the milestones. I need to make sure that, she's, we're going to do this baby led weaning because that was the new craze at the time, and I'm going to use the cloth diapers because they're so much better. And I share this with the kids. I was a crazy mom, and I was very passionate about what I was doing, and from that just I was driving myself crazy, and then my life was completely turned upside down when at 21 months old my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. And that was quite a curveball that was thrown at me because that's not the way that this was supposed to happen. And we, at the time, my husband and I, we were talking as though we wanted to think about having another child, and that put a screeching halt on things because right now she needed my focus and I needed to learn about what acute lymphoblastic leukemia was and how are we going to get through this. And so at that time, I had taken a leave from the GA Learning Center to focus just on my daughter, and had come to realize that you can only control what you can control. And in the case of my daughter, there was very little that I can control. The only thing that I can control was the love and the attention that I gave to her. And I I spent my time with her. I was now a stay-at-home mom, not necessarily out of choice, but out of it was what I needed to do. And we went through this roller coaster of her diagnosis, and she had successfully made it through the initial treatment, and we were on the road of remission where we could actually live somewhat of a normal life. She was going to preschool every other day, and I, again, was fortunate that I could be home with her at that time. I would run to the grocery store, pick her up from preschool, and then we would have this whole day of other activities, including physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, anything to get her to where she needed to be, but also, get her to be a normal child again because that's all I wanted. But then it was actually the week of her third birthday we had found out that she had relapsed, and again another complete curveball. We then looked at other treatment options because the traditional treatment options were not working for her, including some experimental treatment that was being done in New York City. And so from November of her third birthday until January, we were taking trips back and forth between Buffalo and New York City, all in the hopes that she would once again get into remission and then be able to go on to have a bone marrow transplant, which she would have in Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, we never got to that point because the cancer in her body was just taking over and out of control. And so it came a point where the doctors had said, there's nothing more that we can do. We can continue to treat her, but that treatment is most likely going to kill her. Or you could take her home and enjoy, the life that you guys have left together. And all Callie ever wanted to do when we were in the hospital for extended times was go home and see grandma and see her dog Lily. That's
Mm-hmm.
all she wanted. And so that's what we did. We took her home. And there were at different points just so much medical treatment that had gone on, and the doctors had looked at me and they're like, I don't know if you're just trying to hold on to your daughter, but you need to like really consider um just, calling it quits and enough's enough because you're just prolonging the inevitable. And so, I took that with a lot of thought, and I was like very open, I guess, to the universe at that time. And I was like, I need a sign. I need to know like what I need to do. And it wasn't much longer after that that she was put on hospice care. And we had spent, I still laugh about certain things, and the fact that I was so fortunate to be at home with her because there were times when she would have to go under anesthesia and anesthesiology, and I think I'm saying that wrong,
It's all right.
but so
Close
she would
enough.
have to the following day be put under for treatments, and I was very open with her about things like, Callie, tomorrow when you wake up, we're not going to be able to eat breakfast because we have to, have medicine to make us go to sleep, and it was always we, but so, it's 10 o'clock at night. Do you want a snack before you go to bed? Do you want something to eat? And oftentimes it was, she would sit there, and I'm sure with your own children, they just have this cute, innocent way of
Mm.
doing things. And she would look and she's like, I think I want steak and asparagus. And I'm like, child, it is 10 o'clock at night, but you know what? Whatever, fire up the grill, turn on the oven, like you're getting steak and asparagus. And it just after being faced with this and learning that, I only had control over me and my response to this, I feel like we truly made the best of it. And I became very close still to this day with the medical staff at the hospital. And because of this, we've created a foundation and we've had such an amazing support around us. We've been able to stay in contact with the people at the hospital, and since they've actually built a brand new hospital. And one of the things that we've been able to donate is a virtual fish tank. So Callie loved being able to sit when we were in New York City and watch the fish. Of course, Nemo was in there and Dory. And so that was one thing that I was like, Callie enjoyed it so much. I want to be able to give that to other kids. And, I go into pretty great detail with my students because I think that they need to see that I'm human, and that my life hasn't been just a walk in the park as theirs hasn't either. Um, and with that, beyond going through the diagnosis of my daughter and then going through a divorce and then tragically losing my father in a house fire, um, I show them that I haven't always dealt with things the best way, the most appropriate way. There's still days that, I just want to lay in bed and ignore the rest of the world, pretend that, nothing matters and just kind of fall into my own self-pity. Um, but then there's days where I do feel like I'm on top of the world, and and a lot of the time is when I'm working with these kids and am able to have that breakthrough moment with them.
Mhm.
Um, it means a lot to me to be able to share my story with them, and a lot of their parents know my story because, like I had said, I've
Good.
been pretty open throughout this journey, and now with social media and whatnot, you could put anything out there, and kind of like you said, you put it out there, and if they want to find it, they find it.
They find it.
um, yeah, so I've been able to share that story, and I think have just my openness has kind of like drawn that openness from my students, from the parents of my students, and whatnot.
Do you? So I remember where I was and what I was doing when Kelly passed away. I'm gonna get emotional talking about this.
Mm.
So I was following the whole journey on Facebook, and you were posting a lot. I remember you posted the video of when you brought her home at the end, like where there was no treatment left. And I remember you posted in the video, you said, please give us privacy. Kelly wants to be with her grandma and her dog. And I was and then I believe you posted something like she took her last breath on whatever day it was. It was in May, I remember. And I was in Saratoga Springs. I was in a hotel there, and I was sitting on the bed, on a hotel bed, when I read that. And my son was 3. I mean, they were the same age. And I remember just crying for you and thinking, man, like how do you go on with your life? Like what do you do next? Like what happens? And so I mean, I'm sorry. I'm crying in
Don't
your neck.
apologize. There, it's here.
I
I'm
hear
just
you.
better
I
at
hear you.
hiding it.
I know. It's just, and how do you like so I have a lot of questions. The first question is where when she was diagnosed, like what were the symptoms? What was happening in your life? So she was just a regular normal kid who was living her life, happy, smiling all the time, huge smile. People can see pictures of her, by the way. Where can they go to see pictures of her if they want?
So we have, as I mentioned, a foundation in honor of her, in her memory, and we have different accounts on social media. So we are on Facebook, we are on Snapchat, we are on Instagram, and on Twitter. And I oftentimes share, not so much anymore. I think that I've become a little bit more reserved in the things that I put out there. But it all started because upon her diagnosis, and even thinking back to that, it was normal type things that kids go through, anywhere from an earache, which maybe that was related because she was teething, to bumps and bruises from running around, being a kid. And I kind of, that summer prior to her diagnosis, I didn't know if I was being a crazy mom or if I was a little too much for even the doctors, because it was like every Monday morning, hey, like we kind of had a rough weekend and I just want to come in and make sure I'm not missing anything. And sure enough, they said, yeah, I think she has an earache. Yeah, she's teething. Her white blood cell count was a little off, so she must have been ill with something. And then one thing that was very odd to me was all of a sudden she was complaining of her legs hurting her, and she really didn't want to walk. And I remember I had, it very planned out my weekend. I was going to pick her up from the babysitters. We had to run to the mall because I had a wedding that I was going to that weekend, needed a couple things. And while we were at the mall, come on, Callie, like, I had her stroller, but let's walk. And I tried to kind of see what was going on, because even her babysitter at the time, she goes, she's, today she was just not up and at it like she normally is. So I walking through the mall with her, she was like, Mom, will you carry me? And yeah, sure, whatever, I'll carry you. I love my baby girl. I'll carry you wherever. So I did, and that weekend, as I had mentioned, I had a wedding to go to, so she stayed with my mom, and I had asked my mom, "How was the day?" Same thing. She really didn't want to walk a whole lot, and so that Monday again, here we are at the doctor's. No bumps, no bruises. Not really sure. Maybe she's just being a little dramatic, and whatever. And that following Friday, it was just, I remember at the end of my day, I went to the babysitter's as I normally did to pick her up, and she was just so extremely lethargic and
Hmm.
not herself. And Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock, what are the chances that I'm going to call the doctor and be able to get in and see him? Sure enough, he was there just finishing up some paperwork. So immediately we had gone and had done some blood work. And of course, as I mentioned when we were at the doctor's every Monday, I was the mom, like, explain to me what is going on. I need to know. I need to, like, I need to understand this. I'm not a doctor, but I need to understand it the best that I could. And that Friday afternoon, after returning to the house, the doctor telling me, why don't you go home and just pack some bags? Because I think we're going to have to go to Buffalo for some further testing. And even when he called me later and had the results of her blood work and turned out to be what he had thought it was, never did I ask what. Never did I ask, like, what are you even talking about? I just realized, like, something was going on, and we needed to move forward. And that night at the hospital, it was immediate. We drove out to the hospital. They were like, do you want an ambulance? And I'm like, no, nope, I want to call my husband. We're going to head out to the hospital ourselves. And right then and there, the power of prayer, and of course, with social media at our fingertips, I had posted, I just need prayers right now for Kallie. I'm not sure what's going on exactly, but if you could stop and pray. And of course, everybody's then intrigued, like one of those vague messages that you see, what's
Hmm.
going on? What's going on? So I didn't hesitate to, upon finding out that she had been diagnosed with pre-B cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia, I put it out there because I knew that there were questions and I didn't want to act as though I was being dramatic. Um, and my mom came out, as well as my dad, as well as close friends of the family, just to be at the hospital. Whether they could see Kallie or not, we weren't sure, but they just wanted to be there for us. And I had, been crying to my mom about this with Kallie right there by my side. And I said to my mom, whatever happens, just don't treat her any different, please. Like, we gotta pull through this, and she's still a little girl. And I just, right then and there, I made a choice that despite not having any control over the situation, I was going to make the best of it. I had to make the best of it. And going to that idea of being grateful and having gratitude for what you do have, I think I really held on to that during that time. And I made just a conscious effort to not miss out on the childhood that she had, not knowing what the end result was going to be, not knowing that she was going to pass at 3.5 years old. Um, but along that way, just sharing that journey, and it was honestly more of an outlet for me because I was struggling with it and I didn't know how else to deal with it. But by putting it out there on social media, and the amount of people that I met through that, but also kind of the same that I offered to my students. I was hearing stories that my child went through leukemia, and you know what? They're doing great. And even meeting a lady as an adult, she was like, yes, I was diagnosed as a child, and here I am as an adult. And I made it through. And so, having those people to walk alongside me, you included, just being there to offer the support, I think that that's what we need in our world today, is just to be there for each other, and especially these kids who do have pretty horrendous stories. Um, and being able to share that with them, being able to share the things that I've gone through, I think just makes a big difference.
I think a lot of people don't know how to approach someone who's going through something like that. I think it's, I know it's hard for me sometimes when I see somebody in my life that's going through something really tough or something that I can't imagine, something that no matter how much you tell me, I can't imagine it because I haven't gone through it. And what do you recommend that people do? How do they approach it? Is the right move to just come up to you and say, "Hey, I remember Kallie and I want to talk to you about her because I remember her." And I see that puts a huge smile on your face. Like,
It does.
is that the best way to do it? Is to just to talk about it?
Yeah. And I don't think that for any parent who has lost a child, likewise, if you've ever suffered any losses in your life, and being at our age, there's been losses throughout for all of us. Um, but just remembering it, acting like it didn't happen is the worst thing. I don't want people to just pretend it didn't happen, and it's not something that I'm ever going to get over. It's always going to be a major piece of me, but I don't want people to ignore it either. I don't want, and I'm not saying like, oh, I have to talk about Callie all the time. It's
Sure.
certainly not done on a daily basis, on a regular basis. But the fact that like other people, just like you want to talk about your kids. You
Yeah.
want to tell everyone what's going on. And you, I'm sure, love, like, people asking, hey, how's Brooklyn? How's Eli? How are things with them? And, it gives you an opportunity to talk. And I just want to be able to talk about her too. And regardless of whether she's here with me or not. And sometimes I think that working with kids, that's one of the greatest things about it, is because of the innocence, and they don't know how to handle those things, and so they just talk. And
Hmm.
sometimes, just thinking the other day, one of the girls in my office, for some reason, of course, they come to me and they're like, do you have food? Well, I have my lunch, but I was hoping to eat that myself, but I guess I could share it. And this one girl in particular, she was like, do you have any M&Ms? um no. I could maybe find some. She goes, well, I really like the mini M&Ms. Of course, it just put a smile on my face, because I'm like, my Callie loves mini M&Ms too.
Hmm.
And it wasn't like this, oh, did I, say something wrong? Instead, she just giggled about it. We were able to giggle about it together, and there was no awkwardness. We just continued on. And sometimes I think as adults, we shy away from those types of things
Totally.
because we're like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what I should say, what I shouldn't say. But I think just being open and honest
Yeah.
is the best thing that you can do.
It's interesting to hear you talk about her because you talk about her in the present tense. I mean, you say my Kaylee loves M&Ms, not loved
Hmm.
M&Ms, which is interesting for me to hear. I can't let you go though without hearing about your dad. So you kind of dropped that quick. Your dad dropped died in a tragedy, and I remember that as well. I remember that when I was laying in bed, my wife was next to me, and I remember rolling over and I went on Facebook. I woke up in the morning and went on Facebook, and I don't remember exactly what was what, and it was almost like I couldn't believe it. And
Hmm.
but I remember. So what happened with him?
Well, as I had mentioned, after losing Callie, had gone through a divorce, and of course it's embarrassing, but I moved back in with my parents. Um, it was the best thing for me at that time, and living with my parents. And my dad had actually, clear back when I started at the GA Learning Center, my dad had suffered a stroke, and it left him quite disabled. And um, to the point where he wasn't working anymore. However, he still strived for his independence. And I had lived with my parents um, only for a little while, and obviously that was not my end goal, but it happened to be what it was at the time.
Sure.
And I, although I, of course, being in that situation and it not being the greatest, and I was there as little as possible, right? Like I need to move
Of
on with
course.
my life. I need to do what I need to do. Well, it was a Saturday morning, and out of nowhere, my mom, she called me, and she has her genuine routine that she does every Saturday morning. She is quite religious and very faithful, and she just wants to go to church. And then she has her running around, her errands to do. And I know this, and my dad knew this, and everyone was okay with it, right? Like he took his naps, he was okay with it. I went and did my thing. Well, she calls me and she's like, "Are you home by chance?" And I'm like, "No." And it happened to be, it was my dad's 60th birthday.
Mm.
Um, no, I'm not home. And she goes, "Well, I just got a call because of living in a close community. I just got a call and there was a fire call up to the house." And I happened to be an hour away from the house. And I'm like, what do you mean there was a fire call? And of course, like I can feel the quivering in my voice even saying this because it's just still to this day very unbelievable. She's like, I don't know. And she was frantic. I became frantic. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll head right there. So, I had, at the time I was with my boyfriend, and he was like, well, let's get in the car, let's go. And I swear that hour-long normal drive took us 20 minutes. And I, along the way, am calling neighbors, calling friends, like, can you please get to my house? Like, you know, one person that lives across the road, where are you? Well, I'm not home. Can you get home? I need you to be home. And my other friend who has a house up the road but then has a business in the same town, can, by chance, can you go to my parents' house? I just need someone to go there and tell me what is happening. And on that ride, I made so many phone calls, and then my mom called me back, and there had been a fire at our house. And this was the house that we had grown up in. This was our family home. And at the time, we didn't know what had happened. But my mom's like, just meet me at the hospital. We're going to the hospital right now. And when I had gotten there, my dad had already passed. Um, and sitting there with my mom, of course, holding my dad, my brother, who lives in South Carolina, it was so bizarre. And even thinking back onto it, I called my aunt. I remember specifically calling my aunt, and I said, "Aunt Marion, my dad passed away." And she screamed no and hung up on me. And I mean, it's so shocking that we had this house fire, and it was the smoke. The smoke killed my dad. The smoke killed my parents' dog, and the smoke killed my dog, Callie's dog, Lily. And we went back to the house, and I've always had a major fear. I don't know why, but it's just one of those things that has always lurked in the back of my head, that a house fire, I don't know how anyone could survive a house fire. You lose so much in it. And when we went to the house later that day, after spending much time at the hospital, my fear was the things that I had of Callie were going to be gone. And everything that I had known growing up was going to be gone. And it was the most bizarre thing, because in walking in the house, like, yes, you could see for sure that there was a house fire. There was in the living room, it went straight down to the basement. Everything was soaked from the water from the fire department and whatnot, but nothing nothing was ruined in the house.
Hmm.
And so I was still able to look at my handprints of Callie,
Hmm.
and likewise, things that my dad had done throughout his recovery from the stroke. And it was just, again, one of those things that I really have no control over anything. And, I think even in regards to the loss of Kobe Bryant this past week, um, and the way that the world has reacted to that loss, him being such a legend and such a wonderful person, but a father of three, his daughter being with him, his wife losing him. It's just, I had read an article last night about the other seven that were with him, and that's what it was. I don't know if you've seen it. It's been on social
Of
media.
course,
And
of
at the
course.
end of this article, it talks about how obviously Kobe Bryant being a legend, but that we are all legends ourselves to somebody, to somewhere. And working with children, and anyone in life in general, I never want somebody to leave me feeling worse than when they came to me. And I'm not looking to, be no Kobe Bryant by no means. But nor will I be a Brian Mendler. But I can strive towards that, and just in my own small world, I just want to make a difference. And I just want, I laughed earlier about telling kids like don't come back and hang out with me. It's not cool to hang out in your guidance counselor's office when you're, in college. But at the same time, like I just want those kids to be able to leave me and not necessarily fall back on me or come back to me with their problems, but to be able to, like I remember that conversation with Miss Swan, and I can get through this. Like whether it was the story of me losing my daughter, of me losing my dad, like I just want them to know that they have it in them to get through whatever life throws at them. For anyone, it's not just kids, it's all of us. I all week long in conversations that I've had with kids, for whatever reason, it's I want to say one kid said it, and then it's just been with me all week. But I'm like, but did you die? Did you die?
Mhm.
No, you're still here. Like,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
you're gonna make it through this, and you're
Yeah.
okay. And I'm gonna make it through this too. Are some days harder than others? Absolutely. But I could totally choose to be miserable about it and play a victim and, woe is me because look at what the world's thrown at me. But I don't think that would be any fun either.
Mm-mm.
So I do what I can with what I've got. And like I said, I just keep going back because even with my kids at school, I always say to them like, who do you have control over? Who do you have control over? You. That's
That-
it.
That's
You
it.
know, your reactions, the way you respond to things, that's the only thing that you have control over.
That's it. That's it. All the time. And man, what a perspective. What a perspective that that you bring, I think, to so many people. And you know, you are an inspiration. You are an inspiration to me. I'm grateful for you. I don't know how you do it, honestly. You smile and you go to work and you change the lives of these kids. And you know, I don't think you could ever say that, anything good can come out of tragedies like that, or I don't know, but if there is any good to come out of anything, I think you're the one who can find it. And, you know, I appreciate you.
Hmm.
Oh, man, you got me
Well,
on
I
this.
appreciate you. I just, sorry, I'm not like,
The
oh, I
charity
don't
is
know.
called Callie's Crusade. I want everyone to know. So the charity is called Callie's Crusade. If you watch us on YouTube, so all of the podcasts now are up on my YouTube channel, which is really great. And so you can watch it with closed captioning on if you want. And I'm wearing a Kelly's Crusade shirt and hat.
You're
And
rocking it.
people, I'm rocking it. I'm rocking it. I love it. And I'm actually gonna go to the gym after this and box, and I'm gonna wear this because it says "Fight like a girl," and that's the slogan, right? Fight like a girl. Who came up with that, by the way? How did that all happen? Take me through that quick before we wrap up. I'm
Oh,
interested.
So, like I said, we really have an awesome community around us, and I'm so fortunate to have grown up in this community and continue to live in this community. When Callie was diagnosed, we just had such an outpouring of love, and the community had rallied together, our friends, our family, to do a fundraising event specifically for us, knowing that I was no longer working, and oftentimes Shane was not able to work either, running back and forth to the hospital. And they had held a fundraising event specifically for us. And the amount of people, still to this day, to look at pictures, one of the events that they had held was a motorcycle run. And there were over thousands of bikes at this motorcycle run. And because of that love and support that they had given us, we were like, we got to keep going with this, because there's other families that are being faced with this and may not have the support given, whatever the situation is. And we just want to be able to be there and support others who are going through similar circumstances. So yes, we in 2013, with Callie being diagnosed, they immediately, went to task and created this event, and we kept running with it, because it's just been, I think, a way for me to heal, a way for, my mom to deal with things, a way for Shane to deal with things. It's just, I think people deal with tragedy in different ways. And for me to try and do something positive with it, and by doing this foundation and helping other families, it's been a way to help me heal. And as far as Fight Like a Girl, I want to say that it was one of my close friends that just, you know, we're gonna fight like a girl through this.
Yeah.
And then Callie, she kind of put the face behind it, and she was, like, Mom, I'm fighting like a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are, baby. Yeah, you
And she
are.
did. She fought. She
She
fought.
did.
And
She
she
did.
I never seen a kid inspire so many people in my life. I mean, people just flooded social media and the lights, and they had the orange lights. I know a lot of people were that, just amazing. Listen, I know you got to get to school. Thank you so much for doing this. I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate you very much. You're an
I
inspiration.
appreciate
You're
you.
amazing. And thanks. Good to see you.
Thank you. You too.